imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rotten about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
The thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharpened nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool. I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It's only one I choose to devote my life to. That's okay.
It means something. It means something.
And take that away.
You know, that's my take on it. What's yours?
Protonic reversal.
That's like a science thing, right?
Indeed it is. It is a science thing. It is a science place. It is a scientific fact. And we are all up in your face. It is time for the one, the only, Protonic reversal. Welcome to it. Welcome to it. Welcome to it. Legendary guest tonight. I could not be more excited. One of my favorite bands of all time, Hugo Burnham of Gang of Four. Really, really excited for this. I'm going to do a thing I probably should have been doing for the last 248 episodes. And if this is your first time, this maybe won't seem as weird as for longtime listeners or for me, but here we go. Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal is a long-running podcast about music and musicians. This is episode 249. If this is your first time listening to the show, all the archives are at protonicreversal.com and are always free. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding. If you'd like to support the show or get episodes sooner, you can give $1 a month to patreon.com/protonicreversal. And if you like the show or even just a single episode, please feel free to share it along, like, subscribe, post a review. All that helps people find the show, and it's just a darn nice thing to do. So I haven't been doing that at the beginning of the show pretty much since it started. I kind of save it to the end. What I notice is people tend to stop the second after the interview is done. So whether it's your first time with the show or your 249th time, thank you so much for listening. And absolutely positively cannot wait to present the drummer for one of my favorite bands of all time, Gang of Four, Hugo Burnham. Let's get to it, boppers. And I'd like to welcome the show now, none other than Mr. Hugo Burnham. Welcome to the show, Hugo.
Thank you, Conan. Lovely to be here, or there, or wherever we are, in the ether, he said, making a pun.
Out in the internet where we all now live.
Yeah.
I'm going to start off with a rather unorthodox question that I was very excited when I learned that for your teaching stuff, you do critical thinking. It's like one of my favorite. That's like a pain point and like a major thing that I just like. Oh, we should teach critical thinking in schools, like all throughout it. And I wanted to start.
Yeah, it's I've actually taught specific classes about that, but I'm really it should be and is certainly here integrated into any rational syllabus. Whatever you're dealing with, whatever you're teaching. I taught specifically classes about it some years back when I was teaching at the New England Institute of Art in Boston, where I started teaching in 2000. But now I run the internship program for the School of Visual and Performing Arts at Endicott College, which is up on the North Shore of Massachusetts, about 40 miles northeast of Boston. So we have a really good, strong internship program here. It's pretty much the flagship program for the school. It's been going for 30 odd years, the program itself. And I look after all the arts kids, which includes interior design, interior architecture, graphic design, performing arts, fine art, art therapy, and anything related to that.
That's beautiful. And that's something that listeners of the show have remarked is a certain level of interest in what folks who are playing these bands
and are these artists that do when they're not doing that, whether it's after that or during that. You know, yourself, like Martin,
when we've grown up, people say, "What are you going to be when you grow up?" I mean, I started teaching in 2000, and my mother, dear wonderful woman that she is, after 20 odd years in the music industry, as a musician and a tour manager and a manager, and then an A&R person and a music publisher and back to management, she said, "Oh, finally you got a real job at last." Charming, Mum, charming. You know, I then just said, yes, I love it. It's a great gig. It's a lovely, cool little school in Boston. But my starting salary is the same as my expense account used to be when I worked at Warner Brothers.
Sure, yeah.
So, you know, talk
Radiation,
about a real job.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the reason why, again, it isn't just my interest in critical thinking that I bring that up is because for me, Gang of Four is one of those bands that when I was first introduced to your records, it not only musically was adventurous and kind of sparked the imagination in ways of like, wow, it's interesting that that's kind of jagged and aggressive, but kind of almost funky. Okay, interesting. But certain ideas and ideals like were put forward that not necessarily like this is the way that you need to think, but questioning certain precepts, history, as a, for instance. And I found that to be very formative as an influence in the way that like the People's History of the United States of America by Howard Zinn is, or something along those lines. That it got me personally looking into certain things. And I mean, was that something that you guys had planned from the outset? Was it like, hey, we're gonna get real about this, or just develop?
No, I don't think we approached it that coldly and seriously. I mean, we wanted to be in a band. We wanted to have fun. We wanted to make noise that was appealing and challenging. You know, our early songs were sort of Dr. Feelgood meets punk rock meets Jimi Hendrix meets dub reggae. And I think, you know, we had a couple of early songs that were literally about politicians. I mean, there was one called John Stonehouse, which was sort of fun and witty, but it just, you know, when you do that, when you say, oh, Thatcher's a bitch, or John Stonehouse went for a swim, John Stonehouse thought he'd jack it in, you know, as anyone knows from back then what that's about, you time yourself. You're stuck in a particular time. And I think it was more interesting to write things that were less timely, and therefore, well, not therefore, I mean, one can look back at it and say, and they are timeless.
Right.
Which, you know, not being facetious, a lot of the things that we sung about, and I when I say we, John King specifically was the principal lyricist.
Yes.
Whoever you hear singing, just about wrote those lyrics. You know, there's an exception to every rule, but that was an absolute rule. I mean, even down to the B-side of At Home He's a Tourist being It's Her Factory. Those are my lyrics.
I know that's yours. Yes.
Yeah, I sang it. I wrote it. I ran it past John King because I didn't trust myself, and I trusted John's, you know, careful hand and pen. But no, that's how we did it. And John is a very bright, thoughtful, eloquent man, speaking and singing. So,
yeah, and so it occurs to me with the by not making something especially timely, that yeah, you do have the opportunity to make it timeless, and the fact that somebody can discover those songs.
But that wasn't the drive. We weren't thinking more than 3-6 months ahead of ourselves. It was just what was interesting, what made the song gave the song value. You know, challenging ideas, challenging status quo assumptions. And yeah, literally the thing. I mean, look, history is being rewritten every day right now.
Isn't that the truth? Yes.
You by one party in the United States particularly, but also in the UK. I mean, you know, right-wing conservative movements have always done that. Yeah. They've always written, you know, even if Pravda. Talk about rewriting history.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you challenge ideas, you challenge assumptions, things you're brought up to believe are not the way. And it is the politics of our behaviors and thoughts that matter, in essence, far more than the witterings and meanderings of actual politicians, for the most part.
And this similar concepts and anti-concepts will stick around regardless of the characters involved, and are still be. I mean, if you think of something along the lines of history is not made by great men, like that holds true. Like think about like who's telling the story, what's the narrative that's being created, to use modern terms.
It's always the victor that writes the history of the war.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we did.
And I think there's something to be said for ephemerality. Like I don't know if you're familiar with the band Sleaford Mods, but they have a fantastic song called BHS, which is great. And I'm sitting here bopping along singing to it. I'm like, what is BHS? What is that? And then like I look it up. I'm like, oh, okay. And of course I don't get it because I live in the U.S. and it's
you're septic, yeah.
Yeah. And there's something to be said for that ephemerality and being like in the moment. But yeah, again, one of the things that just strikes me, especially with the first two Gang of Four records, is just how still otherworldly sounding they are. And I want to speak about that. But then the sentiments kind of somewhat hold true. Like, let's get drunk on cheap wine, Yeah,
that's a constant. Although, no, not really. I think we've evolved beyond that. It's very much about getting drunk on far more expensive wine these days.
Let's get drunk on mid to expensive wine. Yes.
When we got together to do our first proper reunion of the original four in 2000, we got together in 2004, but the thing happened in 2005 through 2006. We did a nice, quite long interview in a restaurant near where we were rehearsing in London with how rude of me, I can't remember, from the New York Times, but he said, so what's been the big difference, Hugo, between then and now? And obviously beyond the fact that it hurt a lot more this time because we were all turning 50 as opposed to being 23, I said, well, back then it was all big bags of blow and gallons of vodka, and now it's fine French white wine and ibuprofen. So I will repeat that because I was quite pleased with myself coming up with that off the cuff at the time.
The killer line. Yeah, absolutely.
A little bit less in volume and certainly more in quality.
Moderation.
The wine we drink.
Well, and you bring up something that I wanted to talk about, which is the return the gift session. Something that I found very interesting about that is it was like, and in some cases it's like, oh, this is like a different version of the song, like with different production, like it hits a little differently. But there's also like, I think a couple of the later songs, I find them superior to the originals. I think We Live As We Dream Alone is a great tune, and like you never would know it, pardon the opinion, based on the record, because it doesn't pop on the record in the way that I think it does.
I mean, on Songs of the Free.
Correct, yeah. Which I do like the Songs of the Free record, but I think it's just, I think the production on that one seems more of its time, and it was just interesting to me. It made me re-examine a couple of those songs. Like, oh, these are quite good. I didn't.
Yeah, I think that record didn't quite get the attention it deserved, but it was quite a shift for us sonically and the way it was put together. And I think you're right. When Return the Gift was not it wasn't as successful or as well put together and well done as it should and could have been. It took too long. Was slightly less a product of the four of us working together than the first two albums had been. And I think it suffered from that. And it was, there were certain things going on during the time between us and management and each other. When we were playing together, it was fantastic. It was wonderful. We
Sure.
were having a great time. We did a really good job of it. You know, when we first had the meeting, and okay, we can do this, but we cannot do it in a half-hearted manner. You know, we had a great reputation left behind from the early days, and we cannot foul the waters there at all. We have to be really on top of it and as good, if not better. And it was, you know, as I said, it was hard work, but it was great, and it did work. But I think the album was, there were some great bits, but it wasn't a great project. The principle behind it was to say, okay, we can re-record these so that we have the bodywork available to us that we can control the master copyrights for anyone else who, you know, for sync licenses and all that sort of thing, because our original deal with EMI that we signed in 1979, we were still very much unrecouped. And the royalty rate was low. I mean, it was good for the time when we signed it. When we originally signed the deal with Warner Brothers, with EMI for the rest of the world territory, we signed for very much less money than every other label was offering us, because we took a higher royalty rate for the time and had complete creative control. COM, we had it. They couldn't turn things down because they didn't think it was marketable enough, which was part of a lot of record contracts back then. Yeah, we don't really like this single. It's not, we can't play this on the radio. It doesn't matter. This is what we want. So, you know, there was a balance, but there was a big balance in red left on our account with EMI. So whenever there were revenue streams from other than just from sales, it was all getting sucked up by the machine, and we wanted to try to grab back some control of those issues. So yeah, but I don't think it was terribly successful. There were some really good moments. I quite liked the sort of second parts, the second CD of other artists' mixes and remixes and messing around with the masters. Some of those were really interesting and really good. But again, I think it could have been stronger.
Well, it occurs to me too, around that time, I think that was, it was mid 2000s, like 2005, I think 2004, 2005, right? It seemed
it eventually made its way out in 2006. It was supposed to be coming out when we went on tour in 2000.
Yeah. And it occurred to me that, like, again, when Gang of Four came back, that there were so many bands that, if not outright trying to do their version of your thing, certainly there were a lot of bands that were popping up that were Gang of Four influenced suddenly.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a large part of what drove us or encouraged us and the people around us, and, you know, people, oh God, why don't you go out and show them how it's done properly? So that was behind that. That and the fabulous success, you know, in the year or so preceding of the Pixies, who went out again and said, Christ, this little band are suddenly making more money than God.
Yes.
Know, it's nice to be paid for your work. We didn't quite make that level of enjoyment.
Yeah.
But we had a great time, and a lot of people were. One of the best things about that whole reunion tour was half the audience were, you know, fat old balding guys in leather jackets, but the other half were people in their 20s.
Yeah.
That was really encouraging. I mean, it mattered more than just being a retread audience, who it was lovely to see and nice for them to get out, and, you know, nobody, you know, that half wasn't pogoing because their knees already hurt, you know.
Yeah. Employ some babysitters, you know, all that good stuff.
Well, you know, yeah. I brought my daughter out with us for some of it.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the things I was kind of driving at with the timelessness of the music, is that, I mean, it still hits in a way that there's nothing really that quite sounds like those records that I can think of. I mean, certainly there are some corollaries, some like-minded folks at other bands that you could make, but they're incredibly unique sounding. Were unique at the time and continue to be unique. And I think that the idea that you negotiate for this creative control, as you know, rather than taking the payout, I think key to that. I mean, I can't imagine. You know, presenting the record, you know, I'm sure that were they just like, oh, that, you should do. Oh, okay. Well, we said.
Okay, so when we gave EMI Entertainment first time, not the A&R guy, because he was with us quite a lot, and he was the best person at the label, and that's another reason we signed with them, because actually, led by Chris Briggs, who it was at the time, there were good people at EMI, and that was another attractive part of the label for us. Yes, they were big. Yes, they were corporate. Yes, some other division of the parent company made weapons or something, but you know, nobody's underwear is entirely clean in the music business. So we just thought, well, theirs doesn't smell as bad as others, and the people there were good. We had some really good relationships until we walked off Top of the Pops, and then of course a lot of people who were really keen on us were a little bit less keen, but that matters, and that's an extremely strong reason why we subsequently signed for the United States with Warner Brothers. I mean, the people there were extraordinary. Warmer Brothers, as George Clinton used to refer to them as. And we were signed by, we were brought in by Jerry Wexler. I mean, that alone.
Yeah. That's a tough. Sure.
I find out on that one.
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
No, just I was rambling.
I was going to say you brought up the Top of the Pops appearance, which of course has been.
No. It was a non-appearance.
Non-appearance, yeah. It's a legendary story within rock and roll, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. So if anyone hasn't heard it, I'll go through it very briefly. I'm sure most people have.
I was trying to find a way to phrase this. It would be interesting to you.
Go on. Top of the Pops in England was the weekly television chart show that we'd all grown up with. It was part of the fabric of living and being in England at the time. Everybody watched it. A bit like American Bandstand, I guess, would be the closest thing. And we were asked to be on because the first official single with EMI in the spring of '79, At Home He's a Tourist, was actually going this way up the charts. It's like, oh my God. And they asked us to be on. We said, great, fantastic. Okay. But then the message came back, well, we don't like this word rubbers. You need to change it. And it's like, I mean, can you imagine now? The parents, and they're begging you to talk about rubbers. You know?
Yeah, exactly. At least it's conscious.
It was considered very non-you. So we said, okay, we'll change it. So we had to go to a studio, and which we had to do anyway, because those were part of the rather arcane musicians union rules, that you couldn't use the original recording because you're replacing live musicians, but being union members, you get the gig, you get the payment for doing it. So we changed it, and we talked about it. It's like, okay, we'll say packets, same thing, but not an offensive word. So we turned up, and suddenly the producer said, oh, well, we can't have that, packets. That makes it sound like we made you change the words. It's like, yes.
Well, that's because you did.
No, we want you to say rubbish. And to cut a long story short, we refused, because that completely changed the meaning. Packets, okay, we'll make the compromise, but to say rubbish, it's like, no. And they said, well, if you won't, then you'll have to leave. So we, in high dudgeon, said, we're leaving, and we left, and felt fantastic for about a week. And then the fallout of losing a lot of support from EMI, which, rationally speaking, was fair enough. It's like, we've signed this new band. My God, they could have got on Top of the Pops. It would have really kicked off, and it would have done. And they walked away from that opportunity. So as the story goes, they said, oh, we got this other new band we just signed. Let's give them the attention instead. Duran Duran.
Yeah. Some young up-and-comers called Duran Duran.
Pickers. They were sort of quite a lot better looking than we were too, so that worked.
Well, but it occurs to me that decision to stay with the integrity of the song and to keep it, like, that's something that's I found rather inspiring and still do.
Thank you. It
didn't lose any money from it.
It's sort of I won't say a career killer, but it was I do wonder, had we thought more rationally about, okay, can we find another compromise? Because it would have been a huge boost to us and would have kept the label on our side. So who knows? You know, I think we did the right thing, but perhaps we could have done a better thing. And of course, then the next time we put out a single for Songs of the Free, I Love a Man in a Uniform. Hey, great. Again, the EMI's like, oh, this sounds poppy for you guys. We can maybe work with this. And then Margaret Thatcher declares war over the Malvinas with Argentina. And the BBC are told, we don't want anyone talking about bang, bang, shoot, shoot, and army and body bags. And, oh, Christ.
Which it is certainly one of the danciest numbers about such a topic that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, one of them. Yeah.
The other one I'm thinking of is like the MIA song that samples the Clash. That's another good one, which I believe also has. I believe it actually has gunshots as part of the. It's been a while since I've heard that one, but I thought that was a daring production choice that I stand by. But it's a lot easier to do that kind of stuff now because there's other forms of getting the stuff out there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so can you tell me so getting together with the guys, and I don't want to get into the full origin story. I think it's very adequately covered in their media, including the box set.
The full which story?
I don't want to get into the origin story of Gang of Four, but when did you? What was there a specific song where you're like, oh, this is quite nice? Like when you first started playing together, that you kind of realized this maybe you were doing something really special, like something that had some weight to it.
Well, Love Like Anthrax, you realize you're not really following anyone's path. I think that Damaged Goods, when it hit into, it was originally quite a lot faster, and it was called Love Not Lust. And then there was just a moment where it's like, no, and you said, okay, we do have something here. This is far more interesting way to do it, less punky. So we knew we had something pretty early on, something in terms of, we're going to be important. Although I think Andy said when we were recording, I think this is going to be a really important record. Just, guffawed and don't be an asshole. Arsehole, excuse me. Damn him, he was right. It was what we were doing together and how we were doing it that gave us the power to keep at it. And I that sounds weird, but it's like we knew this was worth pursuing because we knew we were doing interesting noises.
Yeah. And
when we played live, whenever and wherever we could, the reaction from the audiences that grew and grew and grew and grew was very rewarding and very strong. And I think particularly when we'd done Europe and everything, and all over the UK. And when we first came to the States in the summer of 1979, probably a week after we'd finished Entertainment, this was a self-financed tour. We had no record company backing us up, booked by Ian Copeland at FBI, who, we were probably one of the fourth or fifth band he brought over with his, it was FBI, but I think he was still at the agency whose name escapes me because I'm old and stupid, based down in Macon. It was part of Phil Walden's group. But anyway, we came in after the Police and Squeeze, to the point where we actually picked up the van that Squeeze had dropped off as they left a couple of days before,
right.
And put sugar in the gas tank, which has caused another whole story that's been heard a lot of times about breaking down in the tunnel coming out of New York City on a Friday afternoon in the heat. But the audiences weren't sure what to expect because, we were political, we were serious, we had this sort of thing. And the fact that we rocked very, very hard and that we performed very, very hard and aggressively and ferociously and blew people's minds. Many people were expecting, before the word was in the vocabulary, shoegazing.
Right. Sure.
We were the antithesis of that. We rocked, and that went down very well. So it was a gradual thing of when the fact that we got to make a record, that first EP with Fast Product. That was exciting. Hearing yourself on the radio. Whoa, and lots of artists I'm sure you've talked to, certainly of our generation, the first time you hear yourself on John Peel, it's like, oh my God, this is great. And then on Radio 1, and then this and that, and suddenly you're on a TV show, and suddenly, you're in a proper van, and you've got flight cases. And I mean, these all sound silly now, but it's like, okay, we've got this far, we can keep doing this. We've got a clue about what we're doing.
It makes it real in a very clear and distinct,
a very visceral way. Yeah.
So on Entertainment, it's such a unique and cool record. It's one of those things that I think the artwork on it is absolutely iconic and could only be that artwork.
Mm-hmm.
But do you have any idea? I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think John designed it, right? With the cowboy.
John did the outside sleeve. I believe Andrew was more behind the inner sleeve, the inside sleeve. John and Andrew, between them, led the visual side of things. I was not an art student. Neither was Dave. They were good at it. And I'm just like, you know what? I don't need to stick my oar in here, because what they do and what they've been doing, I trust and I love. So I don't have to have my opinion on everything. It's great, isn't it? Yeah.
Did it match when you saw it, where you're like, oh, did it match what your thoughts of the music were? Did you have anything with it? Was it just, were there anything?
It didn't not match it. It didn't match it. It's just like, wow, that looks cool. But, the initial thing of, oh, we're not going to have our pictures on the album. Okay. I think, damn, what's my mum going to say? Right. But then understood and embraced why not. We never were. Not until after I'd left the band. And that, again, it's just us. It was important. It's like, it's not about the cult of personality, it's more about the ideas and thoughts we can put across visually as well as musically.
And there, it seemed like there was a little bit of sublimation of self, at least for those early records, towards like this greater overall group goal.
Yeah.
Identity.
I mean, we were sublime on stage. I'm punning there. Again, on stage, it wasn't about a guitar hero and a rhythm section at the back. It was very much four winds, four corners of a whatever. It was an integral partnership.
Did you feel that, were there other bands around at the time that you feel like you had common cause at, as far as just like the, be it either aesthetic or approach?
Oh, I mean, yeah, absolutely. Whether it's the Mekons or Delta 5, who were our, Leeds partners, or the Au Pairs, who we played with a lot, and then, other people we toured with, because even there were the bands that were nothing like us that we loved because they were as ferocious. And I mean, the Ruts, for instance, we did a Rock Against Racism tour with them. That was great. When we came to the States, we had, whether it was Pylon or REM opening for us, Translator, other bands, but just, we were lucky. We chose bands that we felt we had something in common with. Sometimes musically, other times just because they were fun to be on tour with. Let's face it, it can be miserable on tour. So if you can introduce other people who, bring some fun to it. And we did have a lot of fun on tour. Because if you don't, you'll kill yourself.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that there's certainly that first generation of bands that kind of listen to you guys. And like, I'm thinking of a band like the Minutemen that obviously are iconic in their own right.
Yeah.
But you can hear, certain bits and pieces of your influence with it. Was that kind of, was that something that you had to have other people tell you, or did you?
Well, I mean, sometimes, yes. Sometimes like, oh, who's this? The Minutemen? Okay, I better listen to that. And it's like, oh, cool. And then, quite a lot of bands who we opened doors for, and they tore through and made lots of money and sold lots of records. Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Good on them.
Yeah, no, absolutely fantastic. Anyone who can make a living, and a good one, from being in a band is to be applauded because it's really hard and the odds are so against you. So, I mean, we never made tons of money or sold tons of records, but the fact that we're still, I'm sitting here talking to you now,
right now,
we're still maintaining a presence, and that's great. It's fun, rewarding.
What do you feel? How do you feel about the recorded material? Like, it must have been interesting. Putting together the box set and revisiting everything. Modern tastes have changed. It's become, certain things have gone in and out of vogue since then. I guess, some people, put out records during the auto-tune era where auto-tune was on everything. That trendy kind of thing. But again, the record sounds somewhat timeless. So was it? Can you hear it as music now? Like, I mean, with the distance between it, meaning that can you hear the records as more than their constituent parts? I guess is what I'm driving at.
I don't listen to it today the way I used to early on, which was like, oh God, I messed up there, or oh, I wish it was this, or I wish it was a little more that. I mean, there were times I probably said, God, I would have loved entertainment. I would love to have heard what someone like Chris Thomas could have done with it as a producer, but it would have been a very different record. I think that we used to talk with our sound man at the time, who was a real significant part of the team for a number of years, because we never sounded live the way we did on Entertainment. And I've said previously that I think one of the most successful pieces of recording we did was the Another Day, Another Dollar EP with To Hell With Poverty, because that came closest to the way we sounded live. It was the most honest and true sound in the studio to the way we were live. I think
different, yeah.
I think Songs of the Free got a little closer to it. We were a little bit more comfortable in ourselves, a little looser. We'd been doing it longer. We felt comfortable with playing in the studio. I mean, I really didn't very much enjoy making Entertainment. It was really tough. The studio itself, it was quite a small room, and the control room was up here on the left, and Dave and I were down here. We had to start off, and Andrew was upstairs just laying down a thing for, and it was like, no, start again. No, start again. It's like, oh God, this is I had terrible red light fever. Really quite insecure about my playing at the time. But when we got to Abbey Road, even though again, the control room was up there, it was the Beatles, Studio 2, a huge room. It was nice to have a separate producer, Jimmy Douglas, because what he brought was an element of, okay, we got a big brother or an uncle in the room who can work with all four of us. So it didn't become any battle of the wills between the four of us. And so I enjoyed that a lot more. And then when we did Another Day, Another Dollar with Nick Launay, I wished we'd have kept him to do Songs of the Free, because we got him, he got us. He's made some amazing records. I mean, just stuff I've loved ever since, whether it's Public Image or In Excess or any number of Australian acts he's done. He was great to work with. That was a lot of fun. God knows why we didn't stay with him, but
that's... Yeah, sometimes you just don't have answers to those kinds of questions, but it is a great
answers for many questions, mate. It's quite consistent there. I make up a lot of this as I go along.
I think within the Gang of Four pantheon, and we'll get off of Entertainment eventually here, but Anthrax, I find to be a very compelling composition. The fact that it utilizes kind of the best attributes of everyone in a very non-rock band kind of way.
Well, it's not. Yeah, it's not like a rock band at all. I mean, it's like some rock bands, but it's like the concept and the noise was interesting. The contrast between Andrew just being in a very controlled way all over the place, and Dave and I are just like,
keep it together. Yeah.
No fills, no change. Just we start, we keep going, and we stop.
Yeah.
It's sort of brave. I mean, a lot of drummers can't do that. and I'm not saying I'm better than anyone else, but it's like, it's really difficult just to hold one thing down and keep it there, and never to play cymbals and things like that. It's yeah, that's part of what makes it interesting, not doing the same old damn thing all the time.
Seems like it would almost be meditative after a while, just like you're like the locomotive going. Whereas where it'd be easy, just fills all over the place. Like that's easy. Doesn't you know?
It's easy and boring after a while. I mean, you know, Billy Cobham never interested me. Simon Kirke did. Simon Kirke, Charlie Watts. You know, it was less is more, and in many ways so much more powerful than pyrotechnic drumming, which I never was that attracted to, largely because I couldn't do it.
bonus points for honesty. But I mean, you developed a style that I've heard emulated many times, and in a way that, again, it's been influential. The band's been influential in so many ways, but in these subsections of subgenres, it's like a style of drumming now to do that. Some of these songs, and it just occurs to me that, because of course I didn't have to review the records because I still listen to them regularly, which again speaks to records. But it's different when I'm listening to something I know someone's going to be on the show, and I start thinking about it. I was like, wow, there really wasn't a lot of this. It's almost like Kraftwerk like or something. It's insistency like with that. It's like,
you know how to flatter a boy. God, I love Kraftwerk. Yeah.
I mean, and it's just, but it's so clearly played by humans as well. And in that same way that, my first take on it, I was like, oh wow, the rhythm section's almost like James Brown or something, but like the guitar just sounds like broken glass. Like, this is awesome.
Yeah. I wish I could play like James Brown's drummers, but yeah, I know. Okay, I know what you're saying. I mean,
the intersection, between the bass and the drums, how there was, first of all, prominence to it.
Yeah,
but like it
interlocked. We were not just marking time. It was in the same way that Andrew wasn't just playing melodies or lead breaks. That. Again, not very interesting. We were all playing rhythmically. John sang rhythmically. I mean, his percussive work, hitting bits of metal with other bits of metal.
The microwave was a microwave.
Yeah, which ultimately became a microwave. It started off as a metal. That's a piece of scaffolding with some wire, steel wire in between it, and made up by the crew on a. But yeah, and then it was a washing machine lid But I'm not quite sure when the microwave came in originally, but once it was, there's no going back from the microwave.
Well, and it occurred to me, like when I did see you guys, who I was there with was like, oh, do they do this every show? I'm like, I don't know, but I would imagine they're hitting something because it's in the song, like you can hear it.
It was on the rider. Every club had to provide. It's like, send a runner out to the local. Whatever store, and it doesn't have to work. Go to the scrapyard and get one. And then, of course, later on, we'd have when you could do that, some of our lighting guys would set up little lights inside it and stuff.
Yeah, give it a little more.
And then a couple of times when he'd be hitting it and the glass would break out, it's like, oh, maybe we need to put some gaffer tape on the inside. We don't want to hurt anybody. But it's wonderful theatre. And I think it's another thing that we really got and did well was the theatre of performance, without having to have a guillotine like
Alice Cooper,
the wonderful and brilliant Alice Cooper. There was absolute theatre in the way we played off against each other, and the way people moved around the stage or stalked each other, or the tension. I mean, you look at when we recorded that. He'd send in the army for the URGH music war. I mean,
oh yeah.
It's like, and there's a great video. One of our appearances from the Old Grey Whistle test that's on YouTube, and it's all. Is he going to touch it?
Will he or won't he?
And these things would go on when we were on stage. And it's just like, okay, who's gonna break first?
Yeah.
How long can we keep the silence, or the sort of, is it you? Is it me? It was great.
Well, and it occurs to me also that, and getting back to the microwave, the hottest topic of the entire episode, is that there was a sense
Name
of
me one other band that plays the microwave.
Exactly. And there's an element of like, you know,
Now you're talking unique. Okay.
Yeah, it's a WTF moment. It's like, what the, and then like,
yeah,
but there's an uncertainty to it. There's a like, what is going to be happening here right now? And it added to the dangerous element, even as, you know, not as young men as you were, like everybody channeled their performance in different ways. And it just occurs to me that I was like, wow, that's still unique. And it's kind of like making a political statement, but it's also just, yeah, again, it's Alice Cooper with the guillotine, but in a much more pick and save sort of manner. And that, you know, I value that. And then you brought up Urger Music Award, which I had a note upstairs to ask you about. Was that, did you have an idea of what that was going to be? Like when that was filmed, the Urger Music War stuff?
No, it was a Miles Copeland thing. So it was one great big idea, and we'll get all these people to it. What infuriated me was we never got to see any other song. And we probably filmed 4 or 5 songs that night. Yeah. We had no input. We had nobody ever showed us the other filming, which really upset me because there's so comparatively little cinematic record of Gang of Four back in the day. Yeah. You know, we never made any damn videos. Our lighting guy back in the day used to haul around a big old VHS camcorder, and those have gone missing, which is really sad because there's a lot of great B-roll. I mean, there's an amazing documentary for the 1,800 people around the world that might care, but somebody's got them in a box somewhere. You know, between then and 2005, we did a lot of filming in 2005 as well. But again, that's never really seen the light of day. And there's some great stuff. But now, of course, I've lost my thread completely. Oh, Urger Music War. Yeah, I wish we could.
He's sending the arm.
Yeah. And that was great. Although you could see we were a little sort of, you know, a little bit out of it. And Dave slightly messed up the vocals, but nobody knew because we still did it with a plum. It's
right.
Like, you look hard enough at the audience, it's like, I just made a mistake, but you don't know it.
Force of will almost, right?
Absolutely, yeah. The only people who knew it were the crew who'd sort of give us sideways glances. Yeah, you buggered that up.
Did and so of course he's in the Army's on the Excellent Solid Gold record.
Yep.
Has one of my favorite opening songs of any record ever, which is Paralyzed. Like, I think that's a bold way to open a record for any era, but around that time, it kind of seemed like everyone was going exactly the opposite.
One of Andrew's finest moments.
Yeah.
It's easy to point to Anthrax because it's all that knows, but Paralyzed, again, the power of tension, and his strongest lyrical moment.
Yeah, it's a powerful,
fantastic song and great to play, even though it's all very sort of controlled. You know, it's like
every hit matters, though. Every hit
matters, but it's like, and I'm not going to compare myself to the Temptations, but I'm now going to. I mean, the beginning of Papa Was a Rolling Stone. Doom, doom, yeah. Doom, 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 doom. When I used to teach music classes at my first college, it was always the freshman class, first meeting, I'd come in and I'd have it all set up in the class. I'd just walk in and I'd just put it on and I'd stand there and just look at them all one at a time. And they were just, what the? Because this was a class of music students, of recording students, of people who wanted to go into the industry I did, you know, I finished it and I said, so what's the song that makes the hair on your neck stand up? What is the song that make you realize I want to do this? And they're like, and that was the first paper, you know, why are you here? And then, you know, we're getting into talking about recording. It's like, I keep going back there, you know how many tracks that was done on?
Right.
Do you know how long that loop was? And they guess. There was no bloody loop. It was great musicians playing in the same room on a 2 or a 4 track recording, you know, maybe 8. I don't, 2 4-track machine, but just to
almost has the feeling like you're sitting in front of the drum set while you're hearing it.
Yeah, it was a good way to introduce the way I taught them about the history of rock and roll. You got to know where you've been to know where you're going, I think. So
it's helpful. Did you and I feel like Solid Gold is lionized as well in the catalog, but maybe doesn't sometimes quite get the headlines that Entertainment gets.
No, it doesn't, and it should, because it's every bit as strong a record, and very definitely a move up and forward, which is not to compare the two, but it's like we didn't repeat ourselves. We didn't want to. We specifically avoided doing that. And again, I think it sounds like we own ourselves and have more confidence in our playing.
There's an assurance.
I love the record.
Yeah, like it's and Entertainment. It's almost like that the tension in many ways are prevalent and make it an interesting record. But there is an authority to Solid Gold that's it's interesting and it hits in a way that, speaking personally, like I always was, Entertainment's a record, but now I was like, maybe it's Solid Gold. Maybe that's the one I like better. Between the two of them, maybe picking
and playing live. I mean, What We All Want is probably my favorite song to play live, because that
it's relentless.
Chili Peppers wish they could bring the funk like that.
Hear that?
I say that with love in my heart, but really, I mean, it's and just relentless. It was fantastic.
Well, I'm going from Paralyzed to that too. It's just like, wow, the many moods of Gang of Four. Okay, here we go. Let's dig in. Sure. Did you? Wasn't third song Y Theory? That was the sequencing is like different on like the UK version. I saw this once, and actually I didn't see it. I had it played for me once. I'm like, wait a minute, that's not where I remember that being.
Okay, so this came up when we were doing the box set about a possible schism in the sequencing between what, and the answer is I have no clue. I cannot remember. I don't remember the difference or what happened. Maybe it was a re-release by Warner Brothers one year, or when it was re-released by Henry Rollins. Some years in the 90s or whatever it was. Excuse me. I've got no bloody idea.
Fair enough. I just had that. The Barons. Are you familiar with this? It's like an internet thing. The Berenstain Bears and the spelling of it, and that.
Yeah. Oh God, don't. I know. Yeah, I've been through it. I read those books to my daughter, and then someone says, "Oh, it's actually this," and it's that. Oh God, here we go.
Parallel universe theory, whatever. I definitely had a moment of like, I don't remember the speed. This is Solid Gold, right? It's like some.
Well, okay. So here's okay. When we remastered from the original masters for the box set that were at Abbey Road, that John oversaw, but you couldn't go there, COVID and everything else. And somebody brought this up on one of those ANTHRAX websites where they go through record releases like with a fine-tooth comb. So the intro is missing to dig dig dig. It's like, what do you mean? It's like, and then I opened up my box set and put the vinyl on. It's like, Christ, where did it go? And John and I had this, and we suddenly realized, we called the mastering engineer at Abbey Road, and he said, well, it's not there. There's a file with that. Oh, okay, I found another file with that on it. We added that at the last moment. It wasn't on the original recording. So in fact, the ANTHRAX got the real original.
Wow. Oh, wow. Okay.
The beginning of Essence Rare. So,
Yeah.
That'll be a joke we can make on stage if we ever play live again. Do you want the intro or not?
Intro version.
I want the intro. I don't want the intro. Are you mad? The intro's great.
It is a really good intro. That's what's so funny about that.
I know, suddenly it was one of those head in hands moments of, oh God, we fucked up again. But it is actually authentic, and authenticity is what we were going for. Is that backpedaling or what?
No. Brilliant. Yeah. Well, and it just occurs to me, and I full disclosure, I still need to pick up a copy myself. But the box.
I'd love to say I'd send you one, but it's not 1980 anymore, where there are 600 copies in a record company closet for throwing around. They were. You better hurry if you want one. I'm not being rude, but we only manufactured 3,000 numbered copies, and the label, What Matador, have sold out already. It's like, bugger, we should have made 4,000. So, it's like we all thought, yeah, we're going to have 5 each, and it's like I got 3 or 2 or something. It's like, but yeah, it's a fabulous piece. So yeah,
you can tell attention, the love and care that went into it is pretty noticeable. I mean, like the fact
took a long time. John and I, we were talking about it all through the summer of 2019. Having gone through the process of getting all our master copyrights back from Warner Brothers, in There Lies a Tale. And we wanted to do it. We really started in earnest around about the beginning of September of 2019. Authenticity and honesty being the watchwords for how to do this. And it was really John's project. I mean, this was his thing. I was a very hard-working lieutenant, not least because I can't not be involved in all these things, but also I had boxes and boxes of ephemera and crap that I've been carrying around the world since for 40 years. It's like, oh look, here's this beer mat with a cowboy and an Indian sharing a glass of beer together, and somebody had written, look, Gang of Four, and given it to me in 1979 or 1980. It's like, oh, I've always kept it. It's like, great, we can put that in the book. Yeah. Stuff like that. I mean, we poured through so much stuff. And I spent a lot of time finding old photographs and scanning them all. I mean, it was a monstrous amount of work we did, John particularly. And then Andrew died when we were sort of not yet halfway through it, but when we'd really already got going. And then COVID. Now, it was a very, it actually, focusing on the box set helped us through, a difficult year. I mean, it was difficult for everybody and more difficult for many other people, but it kept us focused together on what we were doing. Yeah, it gives you something to work towards and to create and keep you on track to. I mean, the whole point was it was going to be the 40th anniversary release to match the entertainment. Although we sort of missed that by the time it was ready, and we were thinking we should go out on tour, and Andrew, COVID, and all this sort of thing. Yeah. So we may still do that. Was it a sore point when Andy was running around with his band, doing his shows? Okay. You want my opinion? I can't speak for the others quite, but I will tell you my feelings is that once John left in 2012 or 13, it really was no longer Gang of Four. I was happy for Andrew that he was continuing to go out and tour and play. It was great. But in all honesty, semi-jokingly, I thought, well, why isn't he going out as the Andy Gill Experience or Gang of One or something? Gang of One. Yeah, I said that might have been what I said when I saw him. Yeah, well, I've DJ'd as Gang of One over the last decade or so. But anyway, there was an interview Andrew said at one point when somebody asked him about that, and he said, well, it doesn't even need me to be authentic Gang of Four. And it's like, well, or Gang of Four. It's like, okay, you said it, mate. That means we can do something as hard and as difficult and as it could be without Andrew, but Andrew was a brilliant performer, was great. It was, went to see him with the, with the 3 kids who were playing with him when they came to Boston the first time without John. And, it was charming and nice, but it just felt weird. Whenever they came, when it was John and Andrew together, I'd always go, we'd always hang out. It was good. They'd ask me to come and play a couple of songs. So it just, yeah. It would have been ungracious to say, you shouldn't be doing this, or to be public saying, oh, this isn't right. That would have been ungracious. So, yeah, if 1 can do it, then 3 can do it.
Certainly. And it's, the sort of rock and roll circus ridiculousness version of that would be like with Sweet. There was like the guitarist version and the bass player's version, and they were both on tour in different areas at the same time, which is like, okay, guys, come on.
But then you've got Dr. Feelgood with none of the original members, but I went to see them once, and it was like,
yeah,
fucking hell, this is awesome. But they're really good at what they do. It's not my Dr. Feelgood, but they're keeping the whole thing going and keeping it alive. And the Stranglers, I mean,
oh yeah,
is there anyone left? I mean, when I saw them 3 or 4 years ago when they came to Boston, I don't think Jet Black was in it, but Dave Greenfield still was. So there was a degree of authenticity. But you know what? Anyone, especially of our advanced years, who's still out doing it and doing it seriously and properly, great.
Good on, yeah, good on you.
Great.
And that's how I feel about it. Jokes aside, it's like, oh, that's awesome. Good for them. That's fantastic. And I do think it's the idea of there being like some Gang of Four activity, in a uncertain future that we have. That's awesome. Although it is, how do you even begin? Obviously, you're not going to be able to replace Andy. There's no way. But to get someone that would do the thing and add something to it, that's a tall order. That's a tall order. I'm sure you're aware.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a possibility though, is what it sounds like, because that's something that in the future could happen. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm on board. I'll go see it.
Damn right you will.
I mean, I'd go see the bass player's version of Sweet at this point. I want to see any show, but like,
yeah.
But I would love to see that. I think the world could use that. If that, not to sound hyperbolic, but
and I'm not being cute. That is absolutely our intention, and we're doing. There's more than just talking about it right now, but that's it for now.
Fair. Fair. Can't spill all the beans.
We will approach it the same way we approached the reunion touring in 2005 and 6. We're doing this properly. We're doing this seriously. We're giving it everything we can to do it as well as it's ever been done.
Did you find, going through all the ephemera for the box set and all the memories, going through all that, did you find it sparking different things that you're like, oh, I forgot about that, or like, oh, that was on this time where we played, with this, the flashbacks of different.
Okay, so that was a lovely part for John and I, particularly putting it all together, of reaching out to people again, of talking to people who graciously and kindly sent us stuff or gave us stuff. Photographers, we found as almost every photographer whose pictures we'd had, and put a lot of time and energy into finding people so we could give proper credit and pay them. For the stuff we put into the book, old fans, other musicians. It was lovely. And looking at a lot of the pictures, I mean, there's been a lot of, as with almost any band that lasts more than 50 minutes, there's been bad blood over the years and unhappiness and bad behavior. But what was lovely was to see how, in photographs and things, how much we really Well, John said it, how much we loved each other. We fought hard, but we fought for as well as with each other. We were really, it was a special thing we had, even when parts of it were going wrong. So that was lovely. That, and good God, that looks like I had a 32-inch waist. I don't remember that, you know. Andrew always used to call me fat. It's like, fuck off. No, I was a skinny bugger. Not as skinny as Andrew, but, you know.
By comparative analysis, yeah. Well, it almost seems like, I think the phrase now is somewhat overused, but like a band of brothers, right? Like, and with all.
Yeah, band of brothers, just with fewer bullets.
Well, and the way that brothers can factionalize and form a.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm the eldest of 5. I have 3 brothers, and you know, over the years, you fight, you come back together, you laugh, you have a language and a shared experience that no one else has, and you know, you have. So that was very much a part of those first, you know, late 76 to 77 to 81. That was an extraordinarily intense time of shared experiences, and you cannot lose those. If you lose those, you've lost your essence of everything. So we were very lucky to have that. And you talk to many musicians who have had that sort of relationship long enough, they'll say the same thing. And if they're lucky, I mean, you know, we were lucky.
Well, and it's there is a certain bond that's formed with a band that is unlike any other. You know, it's not your family, your coworkers, your conscripted. Like all of
I think if you go to war with a bunch of people, you probably form some quite tight bonds. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. There's no easy way to approach this, but how did you get the news of Andy's death?
How did we get it?
Yeah.
I actually first heard he was sick from one of our old lighting designers who lives and works in New York and had stayed very friendly with Andrew after John left and everything, who we first brought into the family when we were doing our reunion touring in 2005, and he said something, and I said, what? And then very soon thereafter discovered from other friends that he was in hospital and was really very unwell. It was odd and difficult to know how to react from such a distance. It was very sad. I mean, he was not a healthy person. You know, he'd been unwell for many years, one thing or another. So whatever it was that caused him to pass away, I suspect his constitution wasn't as sturdy against it as many other people might have been. But 63, 4, whatever, it's far too young. But it was very sad. As much as we might have fallen out, as much as I might have been the only one who talked to everyone else, because, you know, we always have continuing business. Yeah, it was tough. I felt very sorry for, I don't feel sorry for him, he's dead. He doesn't, you know, what I feel for, but, you know, I felt particularly sorry for his brother Martin, who we'd known back in the day and things like that. You know, yeah.
It's tough because, you know, when people are in our lives in whatever capacity, when they leave, you know, you can tell the impact they had when they're gone, because some gigantic thing that's missing. And that was definitely the one that I never met the man, but I was devastated when I.
No, and I wish I could have been in London to share in his memorializing. I wish, yeah. But anyway.
And I'm sorry, it's a massive.
No. Listen, this is a significant part of the history of this band of brothers, for want of a better expression, that continues to this day. And it was a blow to. It was a blow to a lot of people, and yeah, I don't know what else to say really.
Well, you don't have to. You've said plenty, and I thank you for being so open about that. Let's and I also want to thank you for spending so much time with me. This has been awesome. A few more things. Is there any Gang of Four song that you can think of that just, maybe everyone in the band loved it and it didn't hit the way you thought it would, or maybe it was one that you're like, yes, this one. This is the one this is the firecracker. People are gonna love this one.
Well, I thought Hell with Poverty really should have just cleared the decks left, right, center, because it was so strong and so good. But
I feel like
every single we put out should have been bigger. We thought it was the one. I mean, the tourist thing. Christ, we're going to be on Top of the Pops, and it's like, growing up at our age, that was everything. Top of the Pops was it. I do like to remind people that since then, I'm the only one that's ever been on Top of the Pops. I was on Top of the Pops with Public Image Limited, with ABC, and with Samantha Fox. Man, that covers a wide range, doesn't it?
Wide berth, yeah. Well, and not to put a fine point on it, but you're now the third person I've had on the show that's been involved in the psychedelic furs world that I have not spoken at all about the psychedelic furs with. So the other one, of course, being mutual friend Patrick Ferguson and Phil Calvert at the birthday party.
Yeah, Patrick played a tour with them because they'd actually asked me to play with them on that tour, and that was the year my dad got sick and passed away, and I just couldn't cope with anything like that. So I just had to say, I'm really sorry. I'm really excited about this. And, Richard and I are quite close, and I love the band. And but I said, listen, I can't do this, but I'll tell you somebody who can, who's great. And that was Patrick, who is a terrific drummer, solid as a rock. Really, he knows how to be on the road with anybody. So, yeah. They've come at me a couple of other times since and said, so what are you doing this summer? It's like, I'm working or I'm this, Yeah. Great band. Lovely people. Richard is one of the world's great, fucking brilliant artist as well. Do
you ever play much these days? Like, not Gang of Four stuff, but you keep up with playing drums?
I play not as often as I want to, but my original Premier Resonator kit that was custom made for me by Premier is in the studio just around the corner. My building is the VPAC, Visual and Performing Arts Center. We have a large theater, a black box theater, a rehearsal room, and a recording studio. And my kit's up there all the time. So when I'm in the mood or when I get frustrated, I need to hit something, I go into the studio and play, and I'm rehearsing. But do I play with other people? Not really. I'm not that sort of drummer.
Do you still have that? Do you still have that drive? And the reason why I asked is because I was speaking to Greg Norton from Husker Du, and he's talked about how for a solid, I can't remember the interval, but something like 12 years, 15 years, something. He just didn't play bass at all. He just got into.
I didn't play drums for many years. I mean, I'd sit in, when I was doing A&R, once or twice, couple of the acts I signed. I signed Michael Bean from The Call to his first solo deal when I was working for Quincy Jones at Warner Brothers. And he had me and Dave come and play on one of the tracks. It was great fun. And then I was in the video with him and another fantastic little band called so fantastic, I can't remember the name off the top. Tenderloin from Kansas City, who were like the sort of Midwestern skinny punk rock version of Dr. Feelgood. Although the singer wasn't so skinny, he was about 300 pounds. Fantastic. Ernie Locke, he played mouth harp, he played harmonica like no.
Oh, really?
fat white boy should be able to play. He really, really had the blues, and he was such a great performer. Where was it? In St. Louis. It was a music festival I went to when I was doing A&R. You know, you go from club to club, and I was just walking past something, and I heard this noise. It's like, mother of God, what's that? I walked in, and there they were, and people were going mad. The three skinny boys, you know, guitar, bass, and drums, and Ernie at the front, you know, grease of hair, sweat flying off him, shirt off, and he had this thing where he'd get pennies and he'd put them in his rolls of fat and pop them out to the audience, and every woman in the crowd was going mad. I got to get a piece of this. So I signed them to a little deal, and we made a record, and it was great fun, and I played with them a couple of times, you know, when they came through LA. But other than that, no, I didn't play drums for years. I've still got 3 drum kits, Christ. You know, and too many snare drums. I really have to sort of start lightening the load a little bit. But I will never sell my original Premier kit.
Yeah.
Plus, I want to go on the road with it.
I was gonna say, if you got future plans, you really don't want to. Yeah.
No. As much as anyone said, "Oh, you should be doing so." When we did the reunion in 2005, they were saying, "Oh, you know, we can't afford for you to bring your drums over from America because the first few months were in Europe." I said, okay, well, you know, you got to Premiere this, that, and the other. Said, well, nobody does that. You have to use Drum Workshop or whatever they've got. And it's like, it's part of my thing. So, and I went onto eBay and looked them up for Premiere resonators. And that very day, there was 2 new listings.
Wow.
Bev Bevan's, some of his old Premier resonator kits, right? Bev Bevan from The Move and Electric Light Orchestra. Move, you know, and I bid and I won, and it was just like, whoa, this is great. They were like, brought them down. I think he brought it down to my mum's house or something, and then we got them up to Andy's studio where we were rehearsing in 2005, and just I had to sell them eventually because my mum wanted them out of the barn. It's like, oh please. But it was a great kit, and it was me, and it was authentic, and so
that's great. Well, I was just talking about The Move the other day. That's an underrated band in music history, I think.
Oh, please. It's like there are so many great bands from our youth growing up that some people in the States have never heard, or a few people have heard, or they came once on tour and they maybe had one hit. I mean, you all know Bad Company, but too few people know Free other than All Right Now. And that was not the best thing they ever did. The rest of that album is as good or better. Free were brilliant. The sensational Alex Harvey band did 1 US tour. You talk to any English musician of my generation, and at one point they said, oh yeah, I used to see Alex Harvey at this and that and the other. And it's like, you know, all these people a dear friend, Big Paul Ferguson from Killing Joke, the drummer. You know, I've known each other for years. I actually signed a band of his when I was at Island Records in New York. And I mean, we just bonded over Alex Harvey band. I can think of any number, but The Move, people like that, never really clicked it here. But if you know it, you know how brilliant it is. Roy Wood, you know.
You just reminded me that they have one of these many streaming things. I couldn't even tell you which one it's on, but there's an AC/DC, Bon Scott era AC/DC thing, and there's a British show that they took the spot of sensational Alex Harvey band, and the host not only is clearly sad that Alex Harvey band is not going to be there, but kind of gives them like a bit of a cheeky intro, if you will, about being like, oh, we'll see what they can do, and there's some feedback or something, and then he's like, oh, that must be part of the show, whatever, and they just absolutely proceed to tear the place apart.
Yeah
Tear it apart, like of just like, oh, you really look you kind of look like a bit like a jerk now, buddy. Because that was awesome.
Yeah.
But
there are some videos of sensational Alex Harvey band around that people should really check out because they were quite extraordinary. Went to a lot of those shows.
Did you enjoy doing A&R? Was that something
Loved it. Had a great time. Never sold anything. Never signed anything that sold. But everything I signed, I loved and stand by and still listen to today. I had a great time. I worked with some good people. 9 years. I think 9 years. From my first A&R gig was at Island Records in New York, and then my last one was EMI Music in Los Angeles. It was a good time. Made some good friends. Worked with some good people. Yeah.
Did you learn anything new from being on that side of the business?
Yeah, I learnt how awful some of the machinations of the industry are. But I hope I taught people more than I learned. You know, whether it was other young managers or musicians, it's like I was quite lucky in that I could go into the studio and not be made to feel, or not make them feel like, oh, here's the bloody record company guy, you know, because they know I'd done that. I'd been on that side of it. I think that helped me definitely connect and have some authenticity with the musicians. You know, they trusted me to play the real tapes when I came into the studio. It wasn't just about marking time until I bought them dinner, which was definitely the way a lot of A&R people. You know, look, there were some great A&R people, absolutely, you know, and there were some horrors, but we had a lot of fun.
Again, and I say this as someone that doesn't own a copy of it, but I've seen a friend's copy, and I'm going to pick one up. The box set's extraordinary. I think got everything to be proud of.
Thank you.
For an iconic and legendary band, I think it's absolutely fitting to have something iconic and legendary for the people that want it.
It is a great piece of work. It really is. We could not be prouder of it.
Is there anything
other than missing the intro to Essence Rare? But it's authentic.
Is there anything you'd like folks to know about the box set that we didn't cover, or that?
Not really. I mean, it's, you know, it's beautifully put together. The book is extraordinary, 100-page hardcover book. You know, the little envelope in the back of the book with, you know, rejection letters from labels. It's a lot of fun. You can spend a lot of time sitting and going through it, and yeah, we're very happy. I mean, it's, you know, I'm come out at not soon after Pylon's box set. That's another beautiful piece of work. So thrilled for them, and it was very gracious of them to ask me and John to write something for their book as well. So yeah, you know, that was those sort of relationships that have lasted to this day. Another great part of our good fortune from being in the band. I mean, we made relationships with other musicians or just people that remain to this day. So that's good.
Did you have a relationship with the Run the Jewels guys before they?
Oh, absolutely not. Dave, I think, was the first person who hooked up with them when they went through Portland. He lives in Portland, Oregon. And he said LP came up and said, oh, dude, you're the guy. Oh, I really... And then suddenly it's like, they do? Wow, great.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you know, to be... have him say such wonderful things about our music and how much it affected him. Yeah, thank you. I'll take it.
Yeah, not bad, right?
Yeah, not bad at all. And Frank Ocean sampling us and stuff like that. Yeah, you know, long may that last.
Wow.
I encourage anyone who sells a lot of records to sample Gang of Four continuously and forever.
To Hell with Poverty can be the next one, because that's
to hell with poverty. I have a daughter in college.
Hugo, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for spending so much time with me. I have one.
I'm delighted to be here. It's been fun.
Again, not to put too fine a point on it, Gang of Four is one of my favorite bands of all time, if you can't tell. So it's a huge honor for me, and thank you so much for doing it. It's a canned question. It's the only canned question I ever ask people. You can choose to interpret it however you like, but why do you do what you do?
Because I want to have fun.
Not bad. Hugo Burnham, thank you so much, man.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Been a pleasure.
blinking. Paralyzed. Flat on my back. This our world is built in endeavour. That every man is for himself. Wealth is for the one that wants it. Paradise, if you can earn it. History is the reason. I'm washed up. Blinking. Paralyzed. Flat on my back. My ambitions come to nothing. What I wanted now seems just a waste of time. I can't make out what has gone wrong. I was good at what I did. The crows come home to roost, and I'm the Duke.
All right. So that was none other than Gang of Four. It's Gang of Four block. Highly recommended you get that box set from Matador. Yeah, To Hell with Poverty. Damaged Goods. Paralyzed. Hugo Burnham. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. That was a blast. I hope you guys enjoyed that.
Is this thing on?
Go follow Gang of Four on Instagram. There's an official Gang of Four, but I think the actual one you're supposed to get hold of is a different one that I probably could have looked up before I started talking, which is Gang of Four 7781. So follow that one. Matador Records for the box set, which is absolutely amazing. Name of the show is Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. Thank you so much for listening to it. The show airs live on Radio Nope Thursdays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific. Say yes to Nope. ProtonicReversal.com for the archives.
I've got 50,000 watts of power.
No ads, no sponsors, no kidding. If you like the show and want to get episodes sooner, Patreon.com/ProtonicReversal. $1 a month will achieve that goal, and it also helps support the show. Thanks for listening.
Turns sound into electricity.
Episode 250 coming up.
Can you hear me now?
Stay safe out there.
Out on Route 128 in the dark and lonely.
And take it easy.
I got my radio on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? if you're the fifth caller, or any caller at all, welcome to my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. But there is no special girl. It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves the transmitter. Circles the globe in search of a listener. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Is it really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive? It's the end of radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast day, got my radio on. Can you hear me now? This is a test! If this had been a real emergency, hey! This is a real goddamn emergency!
Somehow managed to. Anyway, not that that's any concern of yours, but I'm knackered. How are you?
Very well, very well. Nice to.